here from CustomDollBaby.com. Welcome back to another episode of Reborn with me, and welcome to the photography side of my workshop. This is actually right behind where we do all of our painting. Once the painting is done, it's a really good idea to inspect the doll in studio lighting, in natural lighting, and different lighting to make sure that the painting that we've done, it looks just the way that we want it to. So that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to take a look at Elizabeth, make sure that we're happy with the painting, and then once we've signed off, if you will, on the painting, we're going to go ahead and seal the paint with a skin texturing layer. Quick caveat on that, if you paint your eyebrows or if you paint your hair or hairline, after the inspection would be the time to do that. So you don't want to do your skin texturing before any other painting steps. I root my hair and eyebrows, so I will not be painting those at this time. I'm going to go ahead and do the skin texturing. So let's jump in. So a little Elizabeth has been chilling out back here since last night. I find when I can afford to do so, it's helpful to let the parts rest for a night or a few days or a weekend so that when I do my inspection, I have fresh eyes. As if you've been looking at something for hours and hours and hours, it's easy to keep overlooking the same thing. So what we're looking for at this point is actually making sure that the 7 vinyl parts that we painted independent of each other look like one vinyl doll. So we want to make sure the blushing is the same intensity across the pieces, that the complexion is the same across the pieces. So I think she's looking really good. It's great to try some poses and different light. Just trying to visualize what the completed doll is going to look like. Because it's usually once the doll is assembled, that's when you start noticing things that just weren't quite right. I would like for her to have a little bit more blush in her complexion. This is something that you can do either by adding a warm blush layer, or what I'm gonna do is take care of it in the sealant. So the first thing we need to do is create our quote-unquote secret sauce. So again, there's a very detailed recipe and tutorial on my website. I'll put a link to it under this video. I'm just gonna quickly whip some up so you can see how it's gonna look. So this is a brand new jar of matte varnish that I just purchased, and it actually has a much smoother consistency than what I'm used to working with. The matte varnish that I had and the one that I featured in all my previous videos had much more of this Vaseline consistency. It's pretty thick stuff. So if that's the kind of varnish that you have, feel free to use a few drops of odorless paint thinner to make it more movable. So you basically want this nice creamy consistency that I'm surprised that I got out of the straight varnish. The coloring is really to your taste. You want it to be somewhat translucent, but I wanted it to have a little bit more pink in it because I wanted my doll to be a little more blushed, and rather than do another blush layer to achieve that, I'm just going to cover it in the sealant. No matter how many times I make this stuff, I always want to try it on a test part before I put it on my doll. Okay, also I went back and I applied more of it to the test limb because I just remembered that this doll is going to have skin texturing. And to get the skin texturing, we actually apply more than one layer of the matte varnish. We just put it directly on the sponge and then apply it to the part. So you can see the texture that's being created here by how it's reflecting the light. It's very, very pretty. So this is going to look great on the doll. I'm going to run this baby through the oven to make sure that it doesn't do anything we don't expect it to do, and then we'll put it on our doll. The test limb has had time to cure and cool. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it and I can feel it. But what we have is our skin texturing with the nice matte baby powder finish, and it blended in perfectly. I didn't get any white stuff or any crusty stuff, so now we know that this is good to put on our doll. So I had to go back to my custom order form and confirm that for this custom order we are doing skin texturing. So if you do not want to do skin texturing on your doll, there is a very detailed tutorial on my website on skin sealing that I highly recommend that you check out. Because sealing and texturing are a little different. When you're doing sealant, you're trying to put it on as thin as possible, so that's why we have our spatula and our plate, and we're trying to make it very, very thin layers. For texturing, we're actually trying to build it up, so we're trying to see those little wrinkles and those little dimples and pimples. So we're actually going to be building the varnish instead of trying to put it on as smooth as possible. So yeah, so if you want to see sealing, I'll get you a link to that tutorial. But what I'm about to do now is texturing. So we don't need to spread it around as much because we do want to build it up. I have this sort of a eyeshadow applicator looking thing that we're going to use to get it down into the creases and those hard to reach spaces. And I have the large, excuse me, spouncer to get the larger areas. So I'm actually going to apply this directly to the sponge. I'm going to smear it around so it's thin. But I'm not trying to get that singular layer that we would normally be getting on the plate. Okay. And I'm going to start with a nice large area. It's good to add the varnish as quickly as possible. Once it starts to dry, it turns into something else. It's also good to keep it capped when you're not using it. Okay. Want to dust this off. You don't want to trap any dust, debris, or glitter on your doll. So I'm just going to get a big mop and take care of that. Okay. I just dropped my brush. The other thing that you want to keep in mind when you're doing skin texturing is that once it's dry, it's going to be very difficult to see it. So you want to work fast so you know where you put it and where you still need to add it. So here we go. See how pretty that is? Actually, we'll put this on the plate so I can get it faster. Just gonna smear that around. It's also good to work one area at a time so that you'll know where you stopped after it dries. Okay, so now I've got these creases that I can't quite get into. So I'm going to take this eyeshadow applicator thing, add some of the sealant to it, and just bounce that down in those creases. And this creates a unique texture down in those creases. That doesn't necessarily have to match what you have everywhere else. It has for a very cool look. Again, we want to move fast. So once it's dry, it's going to be really hard to move. Okay. I'm going to go back over those parts that I just did the creases on, so that everything outside of the creases will be uniform. Okay, and that's our thigh. So we're going to continue to work our way down. Yeah, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I'm done. I just finished skin texturing this limb, and how cool is that, right? I love this stuff. Before we put it in the oven, we're gonna let it dry completely because, as I was saying, if matte varnish is gonna do something ugly, like get gross and crusty, it's gonna do that when it dries. So you wanna give it at least 20 minutes to just sit on the drying rack, excuse me, and do whatever it's planning to do. And that way we can address it before it's permanently cured onto the doll. So I'm just cleaning the varnish off of the toenails because we don't want those to be matte, we want those to be smooth, so we're gonna go over them later with our air dry varnish. Added a little extra to the knee and to the heel because those look extra cute. Okay, so we're gonna let it dry and then check it out. Guys, I have a confession to make, and that is matte varnish has never behaved so well with me. I didn't have to dilute it with anything. I just added my pigment to it, spread it around, applied it to the doll. It's not turning white. It's not getting crusty. It's being very well behaved. And the only thing I can think of is the fact that maybe it has a shelf life. So this is a brand new jar of matte varnish that I just bought, and it has a much smoother consistency than the stuff that I had in my drawer. So yeah, maybe there's a shelf life. Maybe after a while you just need to throw the stuff away and stop using it, but this has been heaven. So if you are getting the crunchies and the chunkies on your doll, definitely check out my other tutorial where I will show you how to fight back the crusties so that you can get a smooth finish. So here is the leg that we started with my, excuse me, with my old matte varnish. Right now, this would have been covered in white stuff. Like you would just see white crustiness everywhere. And at this stage, normally I would go back and start to buff that stuff back off. But guess what? I don't have white crusty stuff. It looks really good as it is. I've got that baby pattern matte finish. So all I need to do at this point is make sure that I haven't trapped any dust or glitter in the varnish. Use a toothpick to kind of scrape those things out where I find them. And then I'm gonna put it in the oven. Give it a good 12 or even 15 minutes to cure. This is your last curing layer, so you wanna make sure it has ample time to cure both the varnish that you just added as well as any layers underneath it that may not have set properly. So also make sure that you get it off of the nails because we're gonna varnish those later with the air dry gloss varnish. But yeah, this looks great. Like I said, this is my lucky day and I will not take it for granted because I really, with the Christmas rush, don't have time to spend an entire afternoon fighting matte varnish. So thank you, God, for that. Let's put this thing in the oven.